Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the School in a Boat podcast. It's the morning time. Good morning, everybody. I'm recording this very early in the day because it has been getting so hot over the past few days because we're all slowly dying, and I cannot record during the middle of the day anymore, or even at nighttime because that's how warm it is. I've been steadily growing into more of a morning person as time has gone on. It's something I've been working on, although I do have setbacks when I'm editing videos because, like any YouTuber out there, a lot of the time editing runs way late into the evening, and you end up sleeping until noon after finally getting a video out. And so we've been, besides those setbacks because of, the lifestyle, I've been doing pretty good in the mornings. I might make myself some coffee, all that stuff. Although I had mentioned in a couple episodes back that I was starting to eat breakfast for dinner. And that is a phase that I'm kind of out of a little bit. Not too much, though, honestly. I'm somewhat out of that phase now. But for breakfast, I haven't been eating breakfast. It's kind of been like a little flip flop lately. I've been having like lunch foods for breakfast, and I don't know why. What happened really started like the ball rolling for this weird trend is that I made myself a sandwich to take for lunch when I was going out. I packed my lunch and all that stuff for school and things like that. But then I forgot it. I just forgot to bring my packed sandwich, and so it just stayed in my fridge all day. And so then the next day in the morning, I was like, I'm tired. I got this pre-made sandwich. Let's just let's just eat this. And yeah, it actually worked out really well. So now I've just been eating like sandwiches sandwiches for breakfast. There's just something really nice and refreshing about some cold cuts, some cheddar on a bun, like on a loaf, the bread that I specifically have are like the bolillos. I don't know how common those are outside of the Southwest, but it's like a very hearty like bread roll, a bolillo. So I like to put, your condiments, your deli meat, your cheese, lettuce, tomato, etc. And it's been a great breakfast. I That is so weird though. I'll get back into the phase of eating eggs in the morning because I my traditional phases are usually eggs. I like eggs more than anything else, but yeah, that's been one of my weird quirks lately. I'm in my living room right now. My living room has been becoming the most comfortable place for me to record. I'm feeling a little bit low energy, a little bit lazy today because it is so early. So I'm like still kind of like a little sleepy. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna chillax on the couch for today's episode. How about that? Just because I wanted to be nice and comfy. And so that's what I decided to do today. And also again, podcast episode during the daytime. This is an unprecedented thing. And I'm also doing it a lot earlier. I'm getting back on track of recording episodes on time and hopefully getting them edited on time. We'll see how that goes. I've been doing a lot of really fun projects outside of just the main channel videos. Right now, things are kind of up in the air because I planned a lot of like videos about music to come out over the next few months. And then I kind of decided that I wanted to make a channel where I exclusively talk about music. And so that means I want to make a video for the main channel, a Disney Channel video for the main channel. And then all of those videos I originally had planned for these months will then go on that channel. I figured that might just be the, I don't know, easiest way to kind of detail and unpack things, just to make things less confusing because I realize just having everything on one channel can get quite confusing for people, and so having things more easily like sectored off might be more helpful. The only problem about recording in my living room is that I'm right next to the road. I live on a corner street, and so there are a lot of loud vehicles that drive by. I was in this similar area. My bookshelf is over here to the side of me, and that's when I filmed half of my Troy Bolton video. And I was running into that issue where I was like, it is so loud. I'd never noticed how loud the street I live on is until you're recording a video and you want complete silence and there's noise happening. So I'm gonna convert the guest bedroom that I have into like my true and real office with like foam padding and everything. Just get it real nice and soundproofed and set up for filming in, so I don't have to worry about noise and stuff like that. But let's move on to my random thoughts of the day, and then we'll get into our topic about Good Luck Charlie. I rewatched my Good Luck Charlie video recently. I don't like really rewatch my videos that often, but something just kind of inspired me to like check out what I had said about the show, and it really sparked my memory. But anyways, let's get into my random thoughts. Since I was already talking about food and breakfast food, one of my random thoughts I wrote down here is that I love protein bagels. So a friend really put me on to the world of protein bagels. There's this specific brand. I don't know if it's like pretty common outside of just where I live. If I could find the name of the brand, I already threw away the packaging, so I don't know. But if I can find the brand, I'll shout it out. It's a brand of bagels that have extra protein in them, and they're fully vegan. They're I was gonna say they might be gluten free, but they're definitely not because they're bagels. But yeah, they're vegan protein bagels, and they don't taste like shit. The thing with so many, especially baked goods that are like have extra protein in them, because that's kind of like a huge trend that's been going around, right? Like, protein maxing on everything. Is that like they always are so super chalky or have that gross protein powder taste, but these bagels just taste like normal bagels. They're honestly really good. And I love having a bagel and cream cheese in the morning. And that's like one of my like quick, easy, just gotta, throw something together because I gotta leave early kind of meals. And I've just been like really liking these protein bagels. They've really helped because I always feel like I'm not eating enough when I just have like a bagel in the morning with cream cheese. And so having the protein bagel with 20 grams of protein, huge help, huge factor towards things getting things done in the morning. I also like those cheddar bagels that they make. The only thing is that I bought those protein bagels, and then I decided to try these like cheddar bagels that I found that just have like cheese on top. I think it said it was Asiago cheese. And the only problem with those is that they stink when you toast them. I've kind of stopped toasting them, even though I like a toasted bagel, because this for some reason the cheese when it's toasted in the toaster smells horrible. Like I don't know why that is the case. And so I have to go back to my protein bagels because those were really good. And I think they had like a cinnamon raisin one, which I like. I like cinnamon raisin bagels. I'm not huge on raisins. I don't really eat raisins ever. And I can pretty much ignore them in cinnamon raisin baked goods, or I can literally just pick them out. Like that episode of iCarly. Do y'all remember that really weird plot line in iCarly where where Freddie makes Victoria Justice, I forget the Shelby Max. She's playing the character Shelby Max. Cinnamon raisin toast, and she's like, I don't like raisins, they creep me out. And so then he eats the raisins out of the toast and tries to give it to her. And of course she's disgusted. It's wild the things that come into your mind and reappear in your memory after years of not seeing a show. I rewatched iCarly pretty recently, as in like 5 years ago. When it was added to Netflix, I watched the first 3 seasons with my father. We made like a habit out of watching it, and we really enjoyed it. And then when we decided, oh, maybe we should watch the rest of the show, like the last 3 seasons, we watched like 2 episodes and was like, I think we're done here. I finished the show by myself, but I stopped watching it with my father. Um, and I've had an obsession with iCarly and Victoria specifically since I was in high school. I was so obsessed with Victoria, especially when I was like 16, maybe 17 years old, that I bought a whole season of the show digitally because there was nowhere to find it. There was no streaming service that had it. Like Paramount Plus didn't exist yet. It was impossible to find. So I bought the whole season. It cost like $10 to buy the whole season because I was like desperate to like revisit the show, and I didn't have cable anymore, and I just had no idea, and it was probably out of syndication anyways too by then, but I was like desperate to like revisit the show and just see how interesting it is. And so Victorious then got added to Netflix, and I tried to watch it with my dad, and we only got 4 episodes through with it before we were like, this show is weird and bad and we shouldn't watch it together. And so, but I, of course, I rewatched the whole show because, I once I start something, I can't just finish it. There's a joke in, a cracked.com, web series video called After Hours. I reference that series quite often because it was very influential on my teenage brain. But the character of Daniel, played by real life guy Daniel O'Brien. There's like a bit where it's like, if you don't like the show, then just stop watching it. It's like, well, I can't just stop watching it. I started it, and that's something that is deeply, deeply relatable to me. I think that character canonically is supposed to have OCD, and I mean, there you go. I do basically as well. So, speaking of Daniel O'Brien, just so random, but he has a podcast with another former Cracked member, Soren Bowie. Yeah, that's his full name, Soren Bowie. They have a podcast together called Quick Question. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I really enjoy hearing their thoughts and opinions, and they're just really funny. They have a really good comedic like banter back and forth. I am so sorry. There was a bug that just flew past me. What the hell? It was like a microscopic fly. Or oh, hopefully it wasn't like a moth. We have problems with moths around here. Or not moths, uh oh my gosh, mosquitoes. There we go. Yeah, mosquitoes. Because it's more humid. And I actually live really close to a river, so the mosquitoes just love to come by. So I don't even know if the camera caught that, but I just saw it flew past me and I was like, ah. But anyways, I just recently closed my windows, so I think a little mosquito accidentally slipped in here. But I really like that podcast. It's called Quick Question with Soren and Daniel. And what's cool about that podcast, about those two people specifically, is that, yeah, they started out making web series and like started on cracked.com being writers for Cracked. And like this is the kind of like early era of like internet comedy, and then moved on to have traditional Hollywood jobs. They both work as writers for network shows. I'm pretty sure Daniel works for Stephen Colbert. Pretty sure he works for the Colbert Show, and Soren writes for American Dad. And so I like hearing their insights into the industry because they're like a part of it, you know? And I don't agree with all their takes when it comes to TV shows because they have very different taste in TV shows than I do, honestly. But certain takes I really appreciate and like. And then they just do random deep dives sometimes, and they're just really funny. And it's just a really entertaining podcast, at least for me, for someone who likes that kind of comedy duo nerdy podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts in my free time. I've actually just started listening to a brand new one, which I was not expecting to do, and that's one of the Mythical Morning podcasts. It's specifically for Mythical Kitchen. It's the Hot Dog is a Sandwich podcast. I've really been starting to enjoy that one, and I have so many others that I listen to. Like I have a large roster of podcasts that I enjoy. Oh, so let me move on to my second random thought, which is that I am too much of a contrarian. Now, I don't remember what the context of this was. There's a specific context, a specific situation that I wanted to mention with this point, but I've completely forgotten it because I didn't write it down. I just wrote down the blank statement thinking it would cause me to recall the previous uh, anecdote, but I don't remember it. It probably had something to do with some YouTuber that I watched. Whenever someone says that they like something or say that they don't like something, my immediate reaction is, well, let's see the other side of things. What if it's actually good, or what if it is actually bad? And I found myself getting annoyed. I annoy myself sometimes with just how like interesting and kind of weird that impulse is within me. Like, part of me even wonders if what is the only reason why I have this School in a Boat podcast is because I know there are some very prominent people on the internet who discuss their hatred for the Sweet Life on Deck specifically. Mostly from people who are just more nostalgic for the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and then they just stopped caring about the show because they're the same age as the Sprouse twins. And so once they entered their teenage years, the actual people who were also teenagers were like, well, now the show is bad. When the show doesn't get worse, you just got older, kind of thing. You know, that classic nostalgia rose tinted glasses thing. So do I like overprotect the Sweet Life on Deck because it gets more unnecessary hate than it deserves? That definitely is a factor into things, but also like my general taste is very, very partial to sitcoms, obviously, considering I talk about them for a living on the internet. So it's one of those things where it's definitely something that I like really debate with myself. Like, do I only like things because I want to be in opposition of other people? Because I'm like a monstrous contrarian? Or are these the things that I actually like and care about? And I've pretty much come back around to the latter, where I'm like, yeah, I do really like these things. I have a desire to build an aesthetic philosophy on why I like these things, because that's another thing about me, is that I can't just like something. I have to know why. I must know why I like the thing. I can't just like it and enjoy it in my pleasure. I have to be like, here's the reason why, and here's why it's a good or a bad thing that I like it. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot switch it off in my brain, the whole intellectual thing. It's something I talk about with people in my real life a lot of the time, where I'm like, I wish I could just turn my brain off and just enjoy something, but I can't. I really can't. It's a blessing and I guess a little bit of a curse, but I don't really see it as a curse because I have a good time. I have a good time with it, you know? I think there are certain books where I can do that with. Like, I recently read American Psycho. I liked the movie, and I thought I would enjoy the book, and I did. It's definitely a lot more intense than the movie for a lot of reasons, but I really did enjoy how it was written and the character of Patrick Bateman. I had a good time with the depravity of what was going on, and I just kind of let the story wash over me. I didn't like start to like analyze it and want to write an essay about it or whatever. I was just like, that was a scary ass book, and I had a good time reading it. Anyways, so maybe like psychological horror and like spooky books will be my avenue towards watching things that I or enjoying things in a way that is surface level. But obviously there are people out there who will deeply intellectually analyze those pieces of media, and that's great. It just doesn't need to be me. Like, it's not that it's void of being analyzed, it's just that I don't need to do that because that is other people's jobs. But my job is for these specific pieces of media. So I'm glad that we had this therapy session together. No, I'm just kidding. It's something that I guess I've been talking about with a lot of my friends and my peers because they have that piece of media for them. Like, I'll talk about how important movies are to me, and then colleagues of mine will be like, movies aren't like that to me. And I'm like, that's cool. Or music. They're like, I don't listen to music in that way. And I'm like, that's good. I'm glad you have like a quick, easy, fast food. Don't think too much about it. Just, get your light entertainment and then move forward. I guess kind of like YouTube videos are that for me. I never feel the need to analyze a YouTube video, but anyways, maybe we should get on to the topic itself, which is Good Luck Charlie. So, like I said, back in late January, I made a 2-hour video on Good Luck Charlie, and I think there's a lot of really, really good stuff in there. A majority of it is me just kind of ranting about the character dynamics and my opinions on them, which I think is the part that people enjoyed the most, or at least that's the part that people commented on the most. If I may go on another YouTube comments are interesting rant, I said I wouldn't do this anymore, and this is, I will keep it very sparse throughout my internet ramblings, but a lot of the time I would describe a plot element or a character development that I didn't like and be like, why would they do that in this show? And people would respond very literally with the actual real life answer. And that wasn't really what my point was. I was kind of asking more of a rhetorical question. Speaking of like philosophizing on my own thought process, I really am trying to get better at Death of the Author in terms of not overly applying it, because a common thing that I like to do is just pretend that the real life situations that created the media doesn't matter and doesn't exist, because whatever I pull from it is what matters the most to me in terms of my analyzing. And that's good to a degree because you don't get stuck on like focusing on the real human being and you focus more on the art. But however, it can go a little bit too far to where ignoring the real life situations that cause the art to exist in that way can limit your, analysis in total. So I think it is important to analyze, like specifically I said, like, why did they bring Spencer back after this cheating plot line? That is so annoying. They just shouldn't have done it. And people go, well, it's because the actors were dating in real life. So that's why he came back as a romantic interest. And I'm like, okay, well that's at least the reason why, so I can know I'm not like so irrationally angry as to why they did that. And I already knew that going into things. I just forgot to mention it in the video. But at the end of the day, I viscerally feel within me still like, but this is a fictional universe. Just because the actors are dating in real life doesn't mean the characters have to. They don't even allow them to kiss on camera. They constantly have these visual gags covering them when they kiss, and that was probably a Disney Channel censorship on the network's part, saying like you can only have this many kisses between actors per episode or whatever. That's just my theory. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's like why can't he just become a recurring character and then not date? Like, this is a fictional world. If they were actors who could, act, which they are, they do good jobs, both of them. It's like then they should have just kept that making sense. You know what I mean? I don't know. I understand that a lot of these writers like to pull things from the actors' real lives to like influence it and imbue it into the series. Like I get that. But it just kind of like there's a certain point where it just doesn't really make much sense, you know? Like it just really doesn't work with the world that the show had created. And the same thing with Toby, where it's like they just didn't do enough with Toby. This will actually transition me into the actual point that I had for this video. With Toby, he really it's very interesting how little he exists within the show and how uninterested the show was in having a fifth sibling and how he barely even exists anymore throughout the series by the end. And there are multiple episodes where he just isn't there. Like the Christmas episode where they're all celebrating Christmas together and Toby's nowhere to be seen. And it's like you couldn't even get a doll in a crib with like some background, ADR. Couldn't even do that. Like they didn't even think about Toby and just like didn't write him into the episode. Or they already had the episode written before Toby was supposed to be born, and then they just like left it that way. It's very interesting. And I know the real life reason is because the actress who played the mom, Leanne Baker, was actually pregnant, so they wrote it into the show. And I think that that's like a fun and interesting twist, and I'm glad that they were able to incorporate that into her character instead of trying to hide it, which is also a possibility that they could have done. There's many sitcom ways to hide a pregnancy in real life. A lot of shows have done it, but I don't mind the fact that Toby exists. I just mind what I do mind is how irrelevant he is in the show for being such a focal point, his birth being such a focal point of the third season. Like I said, it's a fictional world. You can do whatever you want. You can make him more relevant in the series, and they just didn't. And to me it highlights how the show maybe wasn't as on the ball as it was in the first two seasons. But I digress. What I wanted today's topic to be about, and what today's topic is about, is a possible Good Luck Charlie reboot. We're going to be theorizing and fantasizing about it right now. The reason why I was thinking about this is because I was thinking about how bad the Wizards of Waverly Place reboot was, or revival, requel. I don't know, where it's like it's kind of a reboot, but it's a sequel. We follow a new cast of characters, but it takes place in the same universe, right? It's not good. I've only seen a couple episodes, and then I listened to people's recaps and opinion pieces, like YouTube videos on the rest, so I haven't actually seen the full show. So I don't know if it's actually like something I would really enjoy if I actually watch the full thing. Like I said, I've just heard the people's opinions. But from what I saw from the setup of the first two episodes that I watched, it really grated on me in a way that a lot of these modern day Disney Channel sitcoms are just missing the mark, in my opinion, which might be a topic for another day. I do have thoughts on modern Disney, and I wish more people had thoughts on modern Disney because I would like to watch videos about it. That's one of those things where it's like you got to make videos, the kinds of videos that you want to watch because you don't see enough of them. Like we need to be talking about modern Disney a lot more, and not just the ways that like a lot of these like commentary comedian YouTubers do. Those videos are great. I don't mind them at all. It's just that I want to have more of a tangible conversation about these things with the community, with the Disney Channel community. I can only get so much on the Tumblr blogs. They just mainly post updates, and I would like to hear more discussion, more juicy discussion. So if anyone has a forum that they know of that I can join, I'd love that. But since I was a little bit upset with the Wizards of Waverly Place reboot, I was trying to think of like, well, they would screw up every reboot then. Raven's Home was okay. I haven't actually seen Raven's Home, but from what I heard, and considering how successful it was and how long it went on for, people really liked that show, but it had a lot of shakeups like midway through, if I remember the history correctly. But Raven's Home is one of the only more successful examples of a reboot series. And Disney Channel is essentially incapable of making stuff not for babies anymore, because that's what they know their audience is, or at least that's what they are assuming, I guess, their main core audience is. So it's one of those things where they won't do what like the iCarly reboot did to bring things back to iCarly, because I mentioned it earlier. They won't do that. Where it was made for the people who were kids when the show was first airing. So it's made for grown-ups now, and it's like TV 14. So you really could still watch it with a young kid, just with like your adult supervision, kind of like how I watched Friends as a child growing up, or like George Lopez. Like it can be more of a family endeavor, but it's slightly more mature for the people who actually care about the show the most, not the children who. It could be any show. It doesn't have to be a reboot of a classic show for them to enjoy it. They'll enjoy the baby show because it's made for babies. You know what I mean? And so that's a weird dichotomy that Disney Channel falls itself in, because they won't do that. That I think they were supposed to make a Lizzie McGuire reboot, and it just never happened because of the fundamental creative difference between Hilary Duff and the Disney Channel network, which was you have to make it for babies. It has to be a baby show, and it has to follow primarily really young kids. And I think what they wanted to do was have it be the characters of Lizzie McGuire as they're living their lives in the modern day as grown-ups and following that mature grown-up story. And Disney would just not allow that to happen with one of their IP. And so I know that that's the fate of any Good Luck Charlie reboot that they would make. Okay, so that's why I don't really actually want Disney Channel to do one, because it's not going to be good. They've already proven themselves that they will not do an interesting or good or cool reboot of a show. Raven's Home possibly, maybe, being an exception to that rule. Again, I'd have to actually watch the show to see. And it's not that the original shows, I mean, obviously I think they're like really high art and all that stuff, but they're also really catering to children. It's just that the way that Disney Channel sitcoms are made nowadays really cater to children in a way that was different, in a way that is different from how these kids' television shows were in the past. And I've theorized on why that is in like my Sweet Life on Deck video, which I'm hoping you've seen if you're watching the On Deck podcast. But essentially, like, people's media getting way, way more niche. Like, instead of having something that the whole family can enjoy, now the kids can all watch their own stuff and the adults can all watch their own stuff. So it kind of creates this polarizing thing. I can't talk about it too in depth here because that's its own conversation. And like I said, I already discussed it in the Sweet Life on Deck video. If you have spare 2 hours to watch it, if you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend it. But yeah, it's almost impossible to do the perfect reboot I want with Good Luck Charlie, which like the most perfect reboot in like the most perfect world, which we definitely don't live in, would obviously be that we follow Charlie and Toby and they watch back the video diaries that Teddy made, and then they have their own plot lines and stuff, because then you could have the two parents come back and play those characters. But Leanne Baker is a bit radical. She's an extremist conservative, and so she would not be invited back to Disney Channel because they don't want to upset or shock anybody. And she has basically become Amy Duncan in real life, so they would not invite her back for the show. That I can tell you that much. I'm really leaning back now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to get comfortable here. And also, even though I say that's the most ideal version of what the show could be, I don't even know how good that actually would be. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how good or interesting that storyline would be, considering just how disjointed the video diaries are. I think Kean Carlisle's video discussed this. I haven't seen it since it came out, which was like a few weeks after my video came out. Very, very interesting timing there. I promise I have no idea what that guy's getting up to when he makes his videos. I just make my things on my topics, and then other people, great minds think alike, I guess. That's all I'll say on that. But sorry for the loud cars in the background. My goodness, it's so many. But I think he had that similar opinion, if I remember correctly, which is like, yeah, that's the most ideal version of a reboot, but also like, would that even be that good? Or would it just like devolve into slop chaos? Who knows? So I'm here to pitch what I would want the reboot to be, which I think is really cool and interesting and fun and would be very entertaining. Especially as somebody who really likes sitcoms where everyone's miserable. I've consistently denounced the opinion that comedy is only derived from the pain of others. That's a common sentiment people hold, and is also the famous Doug Walker quote. So I always will call it like the Doug Walker take, even though he's not the first person to say that. He's just one of the first people to be like, that is my philosophy when reviewing things. Things are only funny when people are going through, triumph and turmoil. So I always call it the dog walkers of the world who have that opinion. I don't have that opinion. I don't think that that is true. However, having a show start where the characters are at rock bottom is a very, very interesting place to start a TV show, in my opinion. And so that was kind of the first place that I went to when I was trying to think of a Good Luck Charlie reboot, because it just started, spinning in my mind randomly one day. Was like, what is the worst case scenario for these characters? Luckily, since it's a pretty standard show, the worst case scenario, honestly, isn't that bad. Again, it's not like Wizards of Waverly Place where these characters could have a true, intense fall from grace, and that would have made the Wizards reboot more interesting, in my opinion, but whatever, anyways. So, what I think is the sort of high quality peak of the series to a degree is the two brother characters. I found myself really, really liking, especially when I was making the video earlier this year. Finding myself really being interested in the future, the possible future of PJ Duncan and Gabe Duncan, because they're the characters who the show relies on jokes for the most out of all of them, essentially. And so I would be the most interested in what their future would be like. It was kind of like how when I was making my on deck video, I was wondering like, I wonder what London Tipton would be doing today. I wonder what her life would be like after the show ends. She talks how she goes to Paris at the end of the series, like when she leaves for in the finale, she's like, "Oh, I'm off to Paris," and so it's like I don't know. I just would be interested in what kind of celebrity she would be. Would she be like a true Paris Hilton type and like get into NFTs and being a DJ or whatever? Who knows? But it's just like really fun to think about because it's like, man, these characters don't are kind of static. They don't really have too many goals or aspirations outside of the series, as far as I'm aware. And so I would like to theorize on like what they're doing in the modern day. And also those are the two actors I want to see in something now. Jason Dolly and Bradley Stephen Perry. That's like, man, I want to see you guys acting. I don't even know if they act anymore, but like I want to see you guys just like be in something, especially together. That would be awesome. Like I'd love to see them in a show. So I'm like, if there were to be a Good Luck Charlie reboot, I would want it to be not like forcibly like it has to be centered around them, but I would want those two characters to be the focal points. And so here's my setup, my little like setup for the show. Here's my little pitch, my elevator pitch on the pilot of what the pilot would start as. So you have to pick one of the characters that you kind of want to be like where the main location set is. Um, I'm debating whether what I want to happen is that one of them, out of the two brothers, one of them is doing okay. Maybe they're a little bit stagnant in their life, but like they're doing okay. They're stable, and the other character has hit rock bottom. That's what I want the setup to be, okay? And so you could either have it be Gabe or PJ. For this scenario, I'm going to say Gabe is the stable one. Let's say that he got a very normal, boring job, and he's a bachelor, kind of just like drifting through life, sleeping with random girls, maybe not sleeping, just going on dates. We'll keep it more lighthearted, but he's just kind of he's successful, he has a good job, maybe he's a lawyer or some shit. Gabe Duncan would become a lawyer, or some sort of guy in marketing, like he's a CEO or like a CFO of a marketing company, so he's really successful but he's unfulfilled emotionally. And then you have PJ, who is this, chaotic figure who is struggling so much to where he has to move in with his brother. So he moves in with Gabe. Maybe he just got a divorce. Maybe he was married to somebody. I know people want to say that like Skylar's the OTP, and if we could bring Skylar back, that'd be cool. So like you could do your classic reboot scenario. Sometimes stereotypes work. Sometimes you don't fuck with the formula. Sorry, that's a Mike Kiss quote, and no one likes Mike Kiss, so I don't like to agree with Mike Kiss. But in this sense, we don't want to fuck with the formula. Let's say they broke up sometime after the end of the series, and he met a random lady, and they got married, and now they're divorced. If you want like a random baby in the mix, maybe, but like, we'll get into, there's more elements for children to come into the play, so like we'll discuss that in a little bit. But maybe he can have a baby, because the network demands a baby, like a cute little baby. So like PJ just had a kid with this lady, and she's run off, and so now he doesn't have a job. He has this random kid he has to care for. He has to move in with Gabe, and so now there's kind of like this awkward dynamic where it's like, they love each other, but there's some hostility, there's some tension because of the intense awkward situation. And then the thing that I am very interested in, that I think would be the big fun twist, is that then what happens is that Charlie has to also move in with Gabe, because Charlie has become a bit of a troublemaker, a bit of a trickster, They kind of set up that Charlie's personality is kind of a decent mixture of all of theirs. She's like smart and kind, like Teddy and PJ, and then they joke, oh, she has none of Gabe's attributes, and that's what makes her so great, right? But in actuality, she is quite mischievous, and she does scheme quite often. This is a thing we see her do, and even towards Gabe, and gets Gabe tricked up, multiple times. And she's a baby, obviously, so it's never that involved or in depth. But I would like to see Charlie just basically become another Gabe Duncan. Like, she's become another menace to society. And maybe she like gets in real big trouble at school. She even gets like expelled or something, and they have to send her to some sort of prep school to like fix her behavior or whatever. And so she gets sent to live with Gabe, because the prep school he lives closer to it than the parents do or whatever, right? And this is a good way to have it be a non-Amy show and then a light Bob Duncan show, because you could have Bob kind of pop in to like make sure things are going okay with Charlie, and you could just say that Amy is off screen terrorizing him, and Toby is also off screen. If you wanted to bring Toby in too, like for an occasional episode, that would also work. But since they never gave a fuck about Toby, I'm assuming that this reboot's not going to give a fuck about Toby. So maybe you can cast some guy, or even bring back the original actor. I don't know, cast somebody to play Toby and appear like in a handful of episodes as like a guest star. Same in the same way that like Bob would just like kind of casually appear in some certain episodes. I would still want PJ to be successful in like a food industry. So maybe it's like he doesn't have a job, but he has like a very intense, grueling job that doesn't pay him a lot. Like maybe he doesn't have the food truck anymore and he wants to start up a food truck business again. I don't know, if that's a goal for the character to work on moving forward. There's a lot of very interesting ways you can take this kind of setup. This is the point of like a sitcom pilot, is that you have all these different branching avenues that you can visit for infinity. These shows are supposed to have the setup to where they could have 10 million bajillion episodes, and that's not a bad thing. That's usually seen as a bad thing when the network is like, we want to make sure this show continues forever. And obviously I'm not pro network in this sense, because they will usually cancel shows that had a lot more stories within it, because again the show is set up to have as many story capabilities as possible. Or shows that have already used up all their stories will continue on after they've run out of steam, and just because it's like, well, the show, we've built it to continue on for forever, so it's just gonna go way past its prime. That's one of those things where you need a good premise at the beginning, or if you have a specific limited story that you want to tell, then it needs to not be, forced into that sitcom box, like shows like Lost and stuff, where they're like, it can't just go on for forever because of its success. It needs to end at a certain point for people to actually care about it and like it and stuff. You know what I mean? And so a sitcom is not that. Like, there's a reason why a show like Friends can go on for 10 seasons and only kind of get annoying at the end, because there's infinite setups you can do with 20 somethings living in New York trying to date and find themselves or whatever, right? So even by the time they're in their mid 30s by the end of the show. But There is a lot of capability, I think, for this setup of PJ, Gabe, and Charlie, occasionally with Bob, maybe occasionally with Toby. You can explore romantic relationships with all three of the characters. You know, Charlie has a date and she wants to bring him over to the apartment and she wants to, one of my favorite setups in shows of all time is when a character who is normally really confident and cool all of a sudden cracks under the pressure. So like she invites a cool guy over and the brothers are like, you know what, we didn't like how suffocating and involved our parents were with our love lives when we were that age, because at this point, if we're set in place in the modern day, Charlie would be like a teenager almost about to graduate high school. Maybe you could just like kind of fudge the numbers a little bit, maybe have it set a few years back to where she would be like 16, 15, 16, maybe. Like sure, let's just have it take place in like 2021. I don't know. It's not that serious, you know? She's like wanting to go on a date with this kid, and the brothers are like, we're gonna be the cool guys. We're gonna be the cool older brothers in this situation and leave them alone and not chaperone it heavily. And she's like, why aren't you chaperoning me? I'm terrified out there. Come over, like, come help me, like, not just be alone with this guy because I'm terrified because I like him so much. And he's like, obviously, he has to be a genuine nice guy, you know, for this to work. It's a little bit like that episode of Gilmore Girls, now that I'm thinking about it. That's a setup in Gilmore Girls where Lorelai is like, I'm leaving you guys alone. I'm being the cool mom in the situation. And she's like, I don't want a cool mom. I want a strict mom who's going to be there because I'm freaking out over here. Like that's a very fun setup, you know, where she is realizing that just like pure reckless abandonment is actually not what she needs, and that's how you evolve the character from being this like intense troublemaker, this character who might be going down a bad path, into somebody who is, you know, more well-rounded and balanced and is able to express their emotions more thoroughly, because that's usually where these sort of behavioral issues come from, right? Is a lack of being able to express oneself, you know, properly or efficiently. So it's like developing emotional intelligence, having the character of Charlie develop emotional intelligence through her relationships with PJ and Gabe is really cool. And also you can do so much fun sight gags with Gabe like experiencing the torment that Charlie is putting him through, that he put his parents through. I know in the actual show they do a flash forward episode where Charlie is 14 and they're talking on the phone with Gabe, and he has a kid who is like, you know, menacing him. Gabe Jr. is like very much behaving the way that Gabe did throughout life, right? Being like this guy always getting in trouble. And I don't know, we don't need to care about that. I don't want Gabe to have kids yet at this point in the show. Plus, he would only be in like his 20s still, so he doesn't need to have kids yet, you know? Uh Gen Zers like him aren't having kids so soon anyways. So, like I said, Bradley Stephen Perry and Jason Dolly are just actors. Like I said, Jason Dolly and Bradley Stephen Perry are just actors I really want to see in stuff in the modern day. I feel like I would love to see what their interpretation of the characters would be now as grown-ups. And again, I would want the show to have a slightly more mature stance. Like we get to see what adult life is like for these Gen Zers, and it would kind of be a commentary on love and relationships, you know, your standard, you know, story fodder that these sitcoms do. And especially because they're characters that we were really endeared by in the very beginning when they were still children. PJ would be in his mid 30s and Gabe would be in his mid to late 20s. And so that would just be a really fun thing to, you know, look at, and it would be interesting for the viewers at home who are the same age as these characters to also experience. And if we didn't want PJ to be, you know, down on his luck, we can always swap it, of course. We're like, PJ is the successful guy who is also experiencing an emotional stagnation in his life. And Gabe is, I don't know, just got out of jail or something. Because they always talk about how Gabe is, you know, destined to go to jail or whatever. But to me, I feel like swapping that, where it's like PJ's the ever optimistic one, and he's the one who is struggling the most, and Gabe, the one who everyone thought was never going to amount to anything in his life because of his behavioral issues, is actually the one doing well. That kind of twist is what's more interesting to me. But you could really do it either way, and it would still work really well. And I think Mia Tallarico could really sell Charlie in the modern day as like a mischievous kind of popular girl or whatever. Like I would want her to be the most popular girl in school. I want her to be, Cookie Monster pajama pants girl, hot Cheeto girl. Y'all know those like stereotypes of high schoolers where she's just like she's really popular, doesn't give a shit about anything, and because it's very like I don't think she's Gen Alpha necessarily. She was born in 2010. So I don't think she's like a full Gen Alpha character necessarily. As a younger Gen Z or maybe closer to Gen Alpha, there's a lot of difficulties that the young kids are facing in the modern day. Phone addiction, emotional detachment with the world because they see how shit everything is with the job market and like not being able to own a house, not having a stable career unless you make it big on TikTok or whatever. Like maybe there could be plot lines where she tries to become internet famous because people just love to make fun of the internet on these shows. And but it would have to have the emotional core of like her being terrified of the future and social media being the place where maybe she can find escape or comfort in the future because she's terrified of the future kind of thing. Like that's an interesting thing to explore with a kid, and it actually brings the whole social media addiction and the kid on their damn phone thing into an interesting, unique place, in my opinion. And I would just love that. That seems like such a fun, interesting way to take the show, honestly. And again, like I said, you could bring back Bob for a couple episodes. Maybe, he is struggling to bond with Charlie, or there's some sort of parent teacher conference or whatever, and maybe she's still scheming, so she tries to get like PJ to pretend to be, her father. They did this a couple times in the show with Gabe, so it's kind of a callback to an episode because Gabe was like, "I need PJ to pretend to be my dad," and so now Charlie's doing that. And you can have Bob come into the fold. It would all be very interesting, and then of course. You give Charlie a best friend character. Maybe if they, go to school, she can go to school in a couple episodes. I don't want it to be the central focus because I want the main three of them to all have like equal amount of importance. Because again, if this was made by actual Disney Channel, if even if they took the bite for this sort of setup and premise, it would like 80% of the show would be about Charlie going to school at this prep school and meeting snobby rich kids. But see, that's also a very interesting part of things because the class dynamics of the characters is also something that was talked about a lot in the original show. And so having that come into fold with Charlie at a prep school would be cool and interesting, where she's, like I said, her hot Cheeto girl demeanor kind of like bristles against these like preppy rich kids or whatever. And maybe she befriends an emo or something, because I always like it when these sitcoms have emo characters. I find it very funny and fascinating to see how they see us in the real world. how they get portrayed in sitcoms. So she befriends like some misfits or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, the show kind of writes itself after a certain point. You got a plethora, a whole well of just sitcom tropes to really look at and digest and evolve as the show goes on. For Gabe, I want Gabe's main force to be him connecting back with his family as well as trying to find a relationship. I feel like Gabe specifically as a character, even though we only see him really consistently in one good, strong relationship in the show, I feel like exploring him having relationship troubles and struggling to be in a committed relationship as an adult would be an interesting place to take things, because I don't know, he just kind of seems like the type to be a player, especially in this like adult version that I've created where he's like this successful CEO businessman. And I don't know, I feel like giving him this way, because he's still personally dealing with his ability to express his emotions and emotional detachment that he kind of had as a teenager, which is why he was kind of always acting out, just because he felt as though he never got attention from the family because he was the forgotten middle child, right? And so he still kind of projects that into his romantic relationships. That's something that's a little bit interesting. It's like he doesn't want to get too attached to somebody because he feels as though they'll just cast him aside and they'll find something else, and he won't get the attention that he desperately craves from that person. So he just refuses to build a connection in the first place. That's a cool place to maybe take things. And for PJ, he just seems like such a lover boy, such like a sweet, you know, feels his emotions too hard. That's why pairing these two characters together would be, in the modern day, would be very cool, because one is really in touch with his emotions and feels things really, really intensely, and the other has a sort of like cold, standoffish detachment. And so they can kind of learn from each other how to regulate one another in a much more efficient manner. And I don't know, that just seems like something that would be really interesting to explore. Maybe we try to see PJ, get back on his feet and find a career that really fulfills him. It would still be in food, I think, because that was the most interesting thing they gave his character in terms of his livelihood was, liking to be a chef and liking food and stuff. Because it feels like throughout the show, in the original show, he has a lot of aimlessness in what he wants to do. He doesn't have a direct passion for like working or for like trying hard in school. He more of just cares about fulfilling base impulse and base desire. You could have a whole plot line where he's supposed to go find a job, and instead he just gets distracted like talking to random people at the mall or whatever, or just like having these really fun emotional connections with people. But he's upset that the fact that he doesn't have a job and an income, and that he has to rely on his younger brother for, stability. And so eventually it would lead to him finding a job that is emotionally fulfilling for him, that doesn't feel like intense work, but is still something that, fulfills that aspect of his life of being financially stable and stuff. Especially if you give him a kid or whatever. If you give him a 10-month-year-old baby, a 1-year-old baby or whatever that he has to care for. So that's why he feels this like deep desire to, financially provide for his kid because he loves his kid or whatever. But you don't even need the kid. I'm just saying, if the network demands a young kid, give PJ a young kid. And also maybe him struggling to find romance as a young father, or just as a quirky, silly guy that he is, That would all be very interesting. I would like to see that show. I'm like, damn, where's this show now? Do I have to write this script, y'all? And if it can't become a Good Luck Charlie reboot, let's just like rub the serial numbers off and let's just make these all original characters. How about that? How about let's just do that? If the network says no, because they will, Disney Channel would never do something like this with emotional depth that's actually interesting. Let's just hire all the same actors. Get Mia Tallarico, Bradley Stephen Perry, Jason Dolly. Let's just get them all to play completely different characters. Named, I don't know, let's name PJ, let's name him Junior. And let's name Gabe, like, I don't know, Garth. His name is Garth now. And Charlie's name, let's just call her Charlotte. Fuck it. Let's not be, interesting at all. Let's just name her Charlotte. That would be amazing. I would love that show. So I'll have the script on your desk by Monday morning. How does that sound? I will get that script going for you, boss. But anyways, that's all for today's podcast. I am getting warm. It is now the early afternoon and the heat is coming in. I have an air conditioner right here that obviously I can't have on while I record because it's loud as hell. And so as soon as I hit pause, as soon as I stop recording, I'm just going to turn this thing on and just let the air wash over me. And we'll see if I continue to complain about the temperature throughout these episodes. I'll try to keep it to a minimum now that it's been established that I am in fact warm in my new apartment. I'm comfortable at least because I'm not living in a box anymore, but I will have to manage my temperature like a turtle, going in and out of the water for sanctuary. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching the School on a Boat podcast. We're going to try and do an episode every other week. And we alternate between doing an on-deck episode and then a general Disney Channel episode. If you have any ideas or suggestions or questions for me, leave them in the comments below. Feel free to message me on Tumblr. Yes, I am a Tumblr user. I don't really use any other social media, so sending me an ask on Tumblr is the best way to ask me questions, as well as leaving comments on these videos below. Or email me. I don't know. Get my email and send me an email. Honestly, I would actually not mind that at all if you send me an email with a question. And if I get enough questions, I'll do a question answer segment at the end of the podcast, or I'll do it with my own special episode. I don't know. We will have to see. But either way, like I said, thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a nice day. Like, subscribe, all that junk, and I'll see you next time. Bye. My mail is here. OMG, right as I was saying goodbye, my mailman showed up and dropped a package off, and I got all scared because someone was talking. She's on the phone. My package is here. Okay, bye.